Hello everybody, this is Parrish Alford with the Daily Journal. I'm joined by Logan Lowry, our Mississippi State beat writer. We're coming to you from Media Days, getting ready for the first day of action on Monday. Just kind of checking in, kind of feeling our way around here. We're actually in one of the radio TV question and answer rooms, not the main ballroom where they're still putting things together, but wanted to talk a little bit, kind of a preview for Media Days. Logan, chime in here, man. What's going on?
Well, I got my credential. That's the main important thing.
That's right.
That's the important thing for Sunday, was to get these, go ahead and get those secure so we don't have to deal with that in the morning, because there's going to be a lot of people in the room directly behind us. It's probably, what do they have, like 1,200 people here last year?
Well over 1,000. There will be people credentialed for this event that will never see the press box at SEC Stadium this year, but they'll be here. Okay, so there will be a lot of people here, a lot of interest, obviously, for Media Days. This has grown into a made-for-TV, kind of made-for-internet event, and we're really excited about the new SEC Media Days webpage we have for you guys, where you're watching this right now, as a matter of fact. So be sure to check that page throughout the week. We'll update that page multiple times during the day. We'll have something from each SEC team. But Logan, let's talk about our teams a little bit. John Pitts did a great job in Sunday's print edition with the 3 questions that he has us do every year, kind of looking ahead to this event. 3 questions for Mississippi State. Take us through it. What do you think Dan Mullen gets?
Well, I think he's going to get asked a lot about Mississippi State's situation at quarterback. Obviously, last year, Mississippi State was in the driver's seat, having the most experienced quarterback back in the SEC in Dak Prescott. Not going to have that this year. Obviously some big shoes to fill there. Probably the best player ever in Mississippi State history has to be replaced this year. And, 4 guys took snaps at quarterbacks this spring. They exited spring without a starter. And Dan Mullen's still leaving that competition open. He wanted to see what those guys did this summer, what they're going to do in fall camp before he named a starter. And I suppose it's probably going to go down to, may not even be decided by game 1. I think maybe that first game against South Alabama, they may run all 4 of those guys out there, let them get some reps under their belt and kind of get a feel for maybe who has the hot hand right there before they go into week 2 and finally get into SEC play. But, Nick Tiano, Nick Fitzgerald, Damian Williams, and Elijah Staley all still in the mix. I do think, Nick Fitzgerald probably has a little bit of a leg up in the process just because he was Dak Prescott's backup a year ago. But, none of those guys really separated themselves this spring. They all had pretty good springs. I mean, none of them were lacking in any regard. I don't think that, any of them played themselves out of the mix to be the starter, but I don't think any of them played themselves into the mix to be the starter either. So it's a healthy competition. We'll have to see kind of what had happened this summer. We don't get any contact with the guys.
Well, I've seen that 3 quarterback competition. Ole Miss had this at the start of last year. I mean, everybody kind of felt like Chad Kelly would eventually emerge, and that was what happened. But when you're running out 3 guys in a game and you're trying to get reps for them in a game, it's really hard for anybody to establish rhythm.
Right, exactly. And that's one of those games where you hope that you get out and can kind of build a good lead early, where you can kind of try some things. You're not really tight into a ball game. You can kind of throw some guys out there where, if they do have some jitters, you can overcome that. That's not going to affect the outcome of the ball game at that point. But, I do think, even though Damian Williams probably has the leg up in the starting experience category, he has that one start, I guess, 3 years ago now.
Never lost an Egg Bowl.
That's true.
As a starter.
True. I don't think he did a whole lot to win that Egg Bowl as far as putting up points, but he did do enough offensively to kind of keep Mississippi State into that ball game to where Dak Prescott could come in at the end and help Mississippi State win that game close at the end. But, you have to give him credit for 3/4 of that ball game, kind of keep him, he didn't really move the offense a whole lot, but he didn't put Mississippi State in negative plays in that ball game. So there's something to be said for that. But he didn't play at all last year. He redshirted. So he's got some rust that he's going to have to wear off. So that's going to be one of the questions Dan has to answer. Another thing that he has to answer is just all the turnover that they had defensively on the coaching staff. 4 new coaches on that side of the ball, complete overhaul of the defense. Peter Sermon's coming in to be the new defense coordinator. You've got 3 new coaches alongside of him. A lot of NFL experience as well. So we'll have to see kind of what they do defensively this year. I know when we were allowed to watch some of the spring practices, they ran more of a 3-4 look, and we saw that a lot in the spring game and some of the spring scrimmages we were allowed to see too. I couldn't get them to commit that that's going to be the 3-4, it's going to be their base defense this year. I mean, judging from what I saw, it is, but they won't go on record to say, talking to Dan Mullen, talking to Peter Sermon, they're all saying that they're going to continue to be multiple on defense. But even to be multiple, you've got to come out of a base defense, and it looks like the 3-4 is going to be their base for this year, using a new Viper position, kind of a defensive end, outside linebacker.
Coaches
hybrid.
like that word multiple.
They do.
They really
They
do.
do.
You know, kind of lets them. That gives the allure of, hey, we're really not showing you anything. They like multiple.
Yeah, and another thing, I didn't even touch on this in the article that ran in the Sunday Daily Journal, is he's going to get a lot of Jeffrey Simmons questions as well. I'm sure there's a lot of national media that's going to be here. That's a hot topic issue. Anytime you have a male striking a female in a fight, and it's also captured on video and goes viral, and Mississippi State allows that player into school, you're going to have to answer for that, and that's something Dan Mullen hasn't done yet. Obviously, down in Destin at the SEC meeting, Scott Strickland fielded all those questions from the national media, and Dan Mullen wasn't around for that, so he's going to be here. He's going to have to answer those questions. We'll probably hear a lot about that later on this week, and that's something Dan hasn't really talked about yet, because back during their spring, they didn't have any decision made in that yet. He just kind of said we're evaluating things. We're going to give a decision to you guys at some point, but that's really about all he says. And now we'll have to see if he opens up any more about that.
So has he commented on Jeffrey Simmons anywhere, or this will be the first time?
Well, the only time he's talked about him at any length was on signing day, and obviously that was more about his playing abilities and his character at that point. Of course, that was pre-fight as well, so we'll have to see, if that opinion has changed at all. We'll have to just really see how he handles that. And, usually when Dan gets something that he doesn't really want to ask, his voice gets really, really high. And, something to be watching for, because all this stuff's going to be aired on the SEC network. A lot of
so
people
listen for pitch.
Exactly.
You want to know what Dan's thinking? Listen for pitch. Is that right?
Exactly. And another thing I know that he'll talk about it, and it won't be released when Mississippi State Day is on Tuesday morning, is Mississippi State's probably going to be picked last in the SEC West yet again. That's something that's kind of happened, year after year. Mississippi State's continually at the bottom of the SEC West. Now, they've only finished there one time, and that was Dan Mullen's first year in 2009. So I'm assuming, not having a quarterback back, a lot of those question marks on defense, people aren't going to have high hopes for Mississippi State, so they're probably going to be, either 6th or 7th, probably 7th in the division this year. So I'm sure Dan Mullen's going to have something to say about that, because at this event, Mississippi State's usually picked last by the media in the division. So I'm sure that's going to be the case again this year.
Somebody has to be, and State obviously lost a great player in Dak and some others as well. So somebody will be picked there. 3 questions for Ole Miss. One of them will be the NCAA, and the NCAA question will come to Hugh Freeze in many forms and variations, I'm sure. In fact, if this is an event as Ole Miss fans where you want to hear about the competition at left guard or center, or what that number 2 punter's looking like, this is not the place to be. I don't think you're going to hear those questions for Hugh Freeze. I don't think you're going to hear very many team questions. Now, Ole Miss used the Destin Spring meetings as kind of the launching point for telling their story. That was where they spoke to the NCAA letter of allegations. It was where they began to answer some things like that. So some media here will have heard that already. We'll be hearing that for the second time, but many will not. Most will not have had a chance to ask Hugh Freeze those questions, and many will want to do that. Now, here's a catch here. Now, Hugh Freeze, and this has kind of become a trend, Logan. I don't really like it. I wish Freeze went earlier in the week, but he seems to be a last-day guy at media days, and that's where he is this year. So how many media will hang around, strictly to ask Hugh the NCAA question? Bottom line is the event often tapers off by that point in the week. I'll be interested to see what the attendance is. I know that everyone who is still here at that time will certainly come and be a part of the Hugh Freeze session in the main ballroom. As far as the NCAA investigation itself, the next date on the calendar, so to speak, we really don't know what date that is, but the next big event is going to be a hearing before the Committee on Infractions. So we're kind of in that mode right now. The fact-finding portion of this investigation is over. So that's the next big thing, and we don't know when that big thing is right now. But Hugh Freeze will get many questions that take on some sort of NCAA shape or some variation thereof. Another question I think that Hugh Freeze can expect is, how do you replace 3 first-round NFL draft picks? And the answer is you continue to recruit, and Ole Miss has continued to add talent to the program since 2013. That wasn't a one-hit wonder in recruiting for Ole Miss. They have continued to bring in capable players, and so you're going to see some guys who can come in and play at this level that just haven't done it yet. You're going to see guys with new names making plays, and you're going to be able to replace those first-round draft picks better at some places than others. And the big question right now for Ole Miss, I think the biggest question on offense is going to be left tackle. Now, you got a guy who could have been the #1 overall pick in the draft in Laremy Tunsil. We all know the story there. We know how he slid on draft night down to number 13 to the Dolphins. But, who replaces Laremy Tunsil? Because you look at that team last year, Logan, and they went 5-2 without Tunsil. Now, the Memphis loss was a stinging loss. So some say that it kept them out of the college football playoff. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But that was a team that, although it beat Alabama, had some issues during those 7 games. You remember how they got smacked around at Florida 38-10, couldn't move the ball.
A lot of turnovers during that time.
A lot of turnovers in that time. And it was a team that had so much more precision on offense, so much more efficiency when Laremy Tunsil was playing at left tackle. The last 6 games of the season, the Rebels went 5-1 in that span. The only loss, they scored 52 points. It's hard to pin that on your left tackle. All right, so that will be a question. The answer is still kind of TBA. Alex Givens, I think, will get the first shot, but the Ole Miss depth chart, when it came out with the media guide, showed Jeremy Liggins could get some time there at left tackle as well. He played both of those spots in the spring. Hugh Freeze has had a lot of good things to say about Givens, the redshirt freshman, and he was the, quote, starter at left tackle at the end of spring. And, of course, so much excitement and enthusiasm for 5-star freshman tackle Greg Little of Allen, Texas. Hugh Freeze on signing day told us that Little had the best feet in America. Logan, I've always felt like we should get a podiatrist opinion on that. All right, but Freeze says the best feet in America for Little. But then he kind of scaled back that praise a little bit later in the spring when I asked him about Little again, and he said, in essence, he said, we're not relying on Greg Little. We expect him to play, believe he can play, but they, according to Freeze, are not relying on Little at the beginning. And look, the beginning is a very difficult start for Ole Miss. It's not a Murray State or an FCS team or anything like that. They open up with Florida State, then it's Wofford at home, then it's Alabama. So 2 of the first 3 games, and then Georgia after that. Very difficult beginning of the season for Ole Miss. Laremy Tunsil himself was not a starter at left tackle from game 1. He was a starter in week 3 at Texas of his freshman season, but it took some time. It took a little bit of time for Tunsil, and time is not something that Ole Miss will have a lot of with its schedule at the beginning of this season. So those are 2 questions. One more. Chad Kelly. Ole Miss returns experience at the most important position on the field, quarterback. They return the most productive. They have the most productive returning quarterback in the conference. A guy was second-team All-SEC last year and was really playing at a high level at the end of the season. So can Chad Kelly duplicate his success? Hugh Freeze says he can, says he can possibly even surpass that success. We'll see. You mentioned some of the turnovers early last season for Ole Miss. Those, in fact, were there. A lot of them were interceptions from Chad Kelly when he was kind of finding his way. And again, remember, Laremy Tunsil came in, everything got better. So a little bit of an unknown now at left tackle. Could that affect Kelly early in the season? Might he press a little bit, force some things? We'll see. But Chad Kelly comes back and brings Ole Miss, gives Ole Miss a chance to compete, as many believe, for the Western Division title if some things break right. But you've got to have experience and production at that position, and Ole Miss starts the season there with Chad Kelly. So 3 questions there for Hugh Freeze. Hey, folks, we'll continue to update this page throughout the week, so be sure to check it early and often. Thanks for being with us.